Hello everyone, welcome to DSPReacts. Phil here, and welcome to my review of Joker, the 2019 DC movie starring Joaquin Phoenix. I just saw it the other night, and I wanted to talk about it, even though I'm years late. Just got a subscription to HBO Max recently, and now I'm starting to actually catch up on a lot of pop culture content. This is a movie that people have been asking me to watch ever since it came out, and the reviews, obviously at this point you would know years later, were stellar when it came out. Although everyone said it was really disturbing, I always wondered, how good really is it? All right, there will be story spoilers in this review. I have to mention plot points and interesting things that happened in the movie to tell you what I thought about them. Okay, first thing I would like to say is this is not the standard DC Comics Joker in any way, shape, or form. This literally is not even a Batman interpretation of Joker. There's no Batman in this movie. There's no superheroes or supervillains in this movie. This is a story, almost a character biography of someone who was stepped on, mistreated, abused, and literally didn't exist in modern human society, pushed to the brink, and finally snapping, becoming an unhinged menace. And in a lot of ways, it is scarily realistic to some of the things that we have seen in modern society as of late. When you think about the people out there that are committing atrocities, these shootings and things that are going on all around the United States, and you watch this movie, and you're like, gee, I wonder how that could happen. And you watch the movie, you're like, wow, well, maybe something like this, right? Although, admittedly, there's a lot of far-fetched plot points that I'm about to hit upon. So it's the story of a man named Arthur Fleck. He is single, living with his mother, who is elderly. He's caring for her, okay? He has a lot of problems. First of all, he has a condition where he starts laughing hysterically and cannot control it, even at completely inappropriate situations. He even has a laminated card that he hands to people when it happens so they know, I'm not laughing at you. There's nothing funny. This isn't something I want to do. It's just a medical condition that I have that I can't stop. Okay? But man, let me tell you something. Joaquin Phoenix, in this role, maybe a role of a lifetime for him. I've seen him in a lot of stuff. I've seen him in Gladiator. I've seen him in Signs. I've seen him in all these different movies over the years. I have never seen him transform like this. This guy did one of the craziest body transformations I've ever seen. He is so emaciated in this movie. And there are many scenes where he is shirtless to kind of show off how emaciated he is. And it is downright creepy. The guy's like a skeleton in this. I think the only other movie that I ever saw someone do a body transformation like this was Matthew McConaughey in that movie about him, being on drugs or whatever. That was crazy too, to see his body transformation. I forget the name of that movie, but it couldn't have been healthy. And man, Joaquin must really, really love his craft and his work to do what he did in this movie, to look like that. It is absolutely scary to see him. But the story basically follows him. He's a clown. That is his job. I mean, really, if you just start laughing hysterically at a moment's notice, what's the only thing you could probably really do? Be a clown, right? But sadly, he's not a successful clown. He gets beat up by people constantly. He gets mistreated. A bunch of kids, steal his sign that he's twirling for a job, and then he has to chase them to try to get it back so he doesn't lose his job, and then they beat the crap out of him, okay? He is literally society's whipping boy. Everyone bullies this guy. Well, one day, when he's at work, which I guess is some kind of a weird clown recruitment agency, figure that one out. There's like a clown locker room where all the clowns get together to dress up for their work. One of his coworkers heard about him getting beat up by these kids and gives him a gun in a paper bag with a bunch of bullets for free. This is the first confusing plot point for me. Guns are not cheap. They never really were. I know that this movie is supposed to take place kind of in the past. A lot of the TV shows look very old-timey. Maybe they're like 1970s, maybe early 1980s, maybe even earlier than that. It's a little hard to put your finger on the time period. There's certainly no computers and cell phones at this time. But basically, watching it, it's like, when in time would someone who is an acquaintance of someone feel bad for them and hand them a handgun and a bunch of ammo in a paper bag and say, oh, now you'll pay me back for this over time? It's like very weird. No background checks, nothing like that. I mean, now, yes, I know that there's all these laws in place to protect from stuff like this, but to me, it would have made more sense if he was so tired of being bullied, he went and sought a gun, not was just handed one by someone. Okay, so anyway, he gets a gun. Now he's got a gun for self-defense, but now what ends up happening is he's constantly still being, bullied and everything, and he goes to a job at a hospital with a bunch of kids, and his gun accidentally falls out of his pocket, and now he gets fired for having a handgun. Okay? Figures, right? Like, he's supposed to have this handgun to stick up for himself. It ends up making him lose his job. All right? Now, in the meantime, his mother is elderly and getting sick, and basically they have no money. They're strapped for cash. And the mother keeps writing, of all people, Thomas Wayne. Now, for those who don't know, in the lore of Batman, Thomas Wayne is the elder Wayne, the father of Bruce Wayne, who later on would become Batman. Well, Thomas Wayne is supposed to be a billionaire philanthropist. Supposedly, he's someone who owns like all the major businesses in Gotham, and he donates a ton of money to try to make this city, work essentially. And in the lore of, DC Comics, he's a well-loved figure. In this movie, I don't think it could be further from the truth. Yes, he's a powerful figure in the movie, but he's essentially someone who is loathed by the common people. I mean, one of the earlier scenes is that he decides he wants to run for mayor because he feels that the common people just don't know what's good enough for them. And he knows better, and he's going to basically save them all by becoming the mayor. And he just doesn't understand. He even says, anyone out there, who doesn't understand where I'm coming from or what I'm trying to do for them, must just be a bunch of clowns. So I think that's supposed to be one of the hints here at what's to come, okay? So anyway, Arthur Fleck's mother keeps writing Thomas Wayne. And the question is, why? She keeps asking him for help. And it's very weird that he keeps asking for help, okay? Like who, she used to work for Thomas Wayne in the past, something like 30 years in the past. But that doesn't really explain why she thinks that he's just going to help her out of the blue, okay? Anyway, Arthur is obsessed with many different things. One of the things he's obsessed with is a late-night talk show. The host of the talk show is played by Robert De Niro. Kind of reminds me of like a Johnny Carson, or someone like that. You know what I mean? And that's why I think that this is meant to be a show set like in maybe the early 80s when Johnny Carson was still on TV. But he's also obsessed with a neighbor of his, a younger African-American woman who has a young child. He runs into her in an elevator, and she just happens to have this one interaction where her kid's kind of acted up, and she goes like this. Oh, excuse me. In the elevator. Now, Arthur is an antisocial guy, has medical conditions. This is like his only real human interaction he's had outside of the people at his job. So immediately in his head, he starts to think, positively about this woman. Come to find out, he actually followed her for an entire day. Well, later on, the woman shows up at his apartment asking, did you follow me? And weirdly enough, she seems okay with it. And then it actually shows that later on in the movie, I guess they're hanging out and they're almost engaging in a relationship. Weird the way that it began and the way that it happened, because it's very odd that this would happen in real life. Normally you have one human interaction with someone and you're stalking them. They're probably not going to be okay with that, right? So anyway, Arthur basically keeps trying to hold down jobs, not working. He gets fired for dropping that handgun at work. One day he's on the way home from his job on the subway. 3 drunken businessmen are on the subway with him, and they decide to bully him. Why? Because they're harassing a woman, and he starts laughing uncontrollably. Now, it's his medical condition. It's not his fault he does this. He doesn't think it's funny. He's probably nervous, and that's why he started doing it. Well, these guys are assholes. They're drunk, and they start beating him up. They're beating the shit out of him. They're kicking the shit out of him. Now, this has happened multiple times in the movie already. He's had enough, and it's self-defense, and he pulls out his handgun, and he shoots one. The others are coming for him. He starts shooting them, all right? So it looks like 2 of them are dead. Now he shoots one of them in the leg, and this one starts to run away. At this point, now the movie goes from self-defense to maniacal homicide, where Arthur now is hunting this guy down through the subway car. He escapes from the subway car. He hunts him down in the subway and murders him from behind. All of a sudden, after having finally stood up for himself for the first time in his life, Arthur is empowered. He is dancing happily around that this has happened, okay? It shows him go to his neighbor's house, this young African-American woman, and immediately he grabs her and starts kissing her. Okay? Empowered by what just happened. And then it's weird because it kind of flashes around a little bit of different various things happening. Now, he lost his job, all right? So, obviously, he's not going to have income anymore. He has to find another way to make income. That's one of the ongoing plot lines. But as this is going on, his mother basically gets sick and ends up going to the hospital. So when this happens, a letter of hers is left behind, and he reads this letter, and the letter reveals that I take this back. This was before she got sick. I'm sorry, I got the sequence of events wrong. He reads one of her letters that she's been mailing to Thomas Wayne. It reveals that, according to her in the letter, she used to be a romantic lover of Thomas Wayne, but they didn't want to make it mainstream known because I guess whatever, they couldn't be together, or Thomas didn't feel like they should be together. But she got pregnant and then had Arthur Fleck. Arthur Fleck is supposedly Thomas Wayne's son. Okay? So this sets off Arthur to go seeking out Thomas Wayne. And there's an interesting scene where he ends up outside of the Wayne estate. He has an interaction with Bruce as a child. Of course, Bruce is supposed to be later on become Batman. And then eventually, after Arthur kills these three businessmen, okay, this crazy thing starts happening in the city. The people aren't upset that he killed them. They start actually like sticking up, and they want to be clowns too, because they feel like these three businessmen are the embodiment of what's wrong with Gotham, that there's this rich class and everyone else. And Thomas Wayne is the figurehead that represents the rich class. The three businessmen also represented it. And when this clown murdered these three businessmen who were beating him up, it showed that society, the little guys sticking up for themselves finally, okay? So this social movement starts happening in Gotham, where people now actually want to stick up for themselves. And so it's kind of like the people versus all the rich class in Gotham, and there's riots, there's people dressing up, protesting and everything. And when this is all going on, Arthur feels even further empowered. Like, I was just seen for the first time in my life. People saw me and know who I am. They don't know that he's the person who did it, but basically, he's empowered to do other things. Well, he wants to hunt down Thomas Wayne and find out what the hell's going on and why he basically abandoned his mother and him. So he hunts down Thomas Wayne at a theater, confronts him in the bathroom, and Thomas Wayne reveals, listen, I'm going to tell you something right now. It's all fake. Your mother's crazy. She made it all up. She was an employee of mine who then made up this insane story. It's not true. Look it up for yourself, but leave me alone and leave my son alone. And he punches him right in the face. Okay? Well, now, of course, Arthur really wants to get to the bottom of it, does more research, ends up in a mental institution, steals records, and come to find out, he finds out, yes, his mother is crazy, and basically made the whole thing up. According to the records, all of his issues, his hysterical laughing, his medical conditions, are all because his mother abused him when he was a child. That actually what happened was she was so crazy, she would let an abusive boyfriend, come over and beat him and tie him to a radiator and do all this messed up stuff to him, and it destroyed him. So that's why he's all messed up. The whole Thomas Wayne story, literally 100% made up by his mom because she's nuts. So, at one point, his mom has, a stroke and ends up in the hospital. And they even show at first, before all this is revealed, that the mother was crazy and making all this up, that Arthur's a very attentive child. Again, he was taking care of her all this time. He's even there with his girlfriend, waiting for the mom to wake up because she's in this coma from the stroke. So eventually she wakes up, but Arthur found out the truth. He walks in and he smothers her with a pillow and kills her. Arthur is now on a homicidal murder spree, essentially, because he's very upset that basically his whole life is a lie. Everyone, his mother, who's the most trusted person in his life, had been lying to him his whole life about who he was and why he was how he is. So he can't trust her. Society as a whole hates him, treating him like dirt. So basically, he's becoming increasingly more unhinged over the course of the movie, just getting worse and worse and worse, okay? So, some other things, there's other plot lines going on too. I'm just basically trying to summarize the whole thing. But one of the other plot lines is that he wants to be a stand-up comedian. He tries it and he fails. He can't stop laughing on stage. His jokes aren't very good. So that someone films it and sends it in to that late-night talk show host that he idolizes, played by Robert De Niro. So Robert De Niro makes fun of him on national TV, which, of course, now Arthur, who's empowered by sticking up for himself for the first time, is now fixated on wanting to do some bad things to this talk show host, okay? Well, the talk show host invites him on the show. calls him out of the blue and says, hey, I want you on the show. Would you want to be a guest? So this is another thing to me seems very improbable. Number one, during the time period this movie takes place, who is filming at a nightclub so they could have footage of this? It doesn't make sense because it's supposed to be old-timey. There weren't camcorders and stuff back then. So how'd they film him is number one. Number two, why on earth, for the guy that you're just randomly making fun of on your comedy show, why would you now invite him to the show? And then this leads to something else that's very implausible that happens at the end of the movie, okay? So, all these plot lines are going on, all right, during the time when all this is happening. It's, we're talking maybe a week or two after the murder of those 3 businessmen, okay? And basically Gotham is at war now. Like, everyone's protesting back, forth, left, and right about people versus the rich. It's like these 2 classes at war. And everyone's dressing up like a clown because he was dressed up like a clown when he first killed those businessmen. Everyone wants to be like him. So he's seeing this whole social cultural movement happen as a result of him sticking up for himself. And he's empowered to do all these things. So there's a plot line where basically at one point, and I'm trying to remember exactly the point that this happens, but I guess his former co-workers at the clown job show up because cops are now asking everyone about him and his involvement with these 3 businessmen, but they don't know that it's him. They don't know it's Arthur. They might think it might be one of the other clowns. So the guy who gave him the gun, as well as a small man, what do they call them? I know it's insulting. I don't want to say the M word, but I guess little people. Someone of very small stature. And the guy who gave him the gun show up to his apartment. And this is the next brutal murder. He just brutally out of nowhere murders the guy who gave him the gun. Now, I guess what we're to understand is that at one point he had bullied him. Maybe the fact that he'd given him the gun to begin with and then was going to force him into paying it back for it or something. I don't know. It was a little confusing, that plot point for me. And then he lets the little person go, which is crazy, of course, because now there's obviously evidence that he's the homicidal killer, but nothing really comes of it. The final plot point, this is where the movie turns for me into a crazy movie. Like, up to this point, it's already nutty, and it's like, oh my god, this guy is unhinged, he's emaciated, it's crazy the way he's acting and everything. The craziest part is that he's sitting in his girlfriend's apartment, but his girlfriend comes out of the bedroom and says, oh my god, you're in the wrong apartment, what are you doing here? And he starts talking to her, and she's like, you gotta get out, please leave me alone, don't hurt me and my family. My daughter's in the room. I'm like, wait, what? And then it clicks. He made the whole thing up. In his mind, he was in a romantic relationship with this neighbor who had done nothing but done this before. To him, that was it. That was the one interaction. After that, he stalked her. After that, he fabricated all these situations in his head of him being romantically with her when they never happened. Come to find out, at this point, this is a big logic break for the movie. You realize the entire movie could be fake. Like, literally, you don't know what's real and what's not in this movie. You have absolutely no idea what's actually going on or what he's made up in his brain up to this point. Did he or did he not kill anyone? Did he kill more people? Did he kill less people? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to think that you're now in the mind of a madman. You're seeing it from his perspective. And this totally reminded me of the movie Memento. And what was that other movie as well? Fight Club. Both of those movies are movies from people who have disjointed memories and or mental illness, and you can't tell what's real and what's not in those movies. I mean, entire characters in Fight Club are imaginary, and you don't realize that until you have multiple viewings of the movie. So now I'm watching, now I'm fascinated, because now I'm like, now I actually have no idea what's going on and what's not going on in this movie. It could be real, it could be completely fake, it could be half fake. You don't know, because you only have evidence that one person, at least their relationship was fake. So the big culmination of the movie is that Arthur Fleck is going to go on this TV show, this late night show, okay? And this is where it becomes broken because you don't know if what you see for the rest of the movie is real or not. What ends up happening is somehow he gets on the show with a gun. How? There's no screening of the guests. They didn't think that the guy who shows up in Joker face paint could possibly be crazy. You know, it doesn't really make logical sense to me, which almost makes me feel like maybe it doesn't happen. But anyway, he's a guest. He gets on stage with this talk show host and basically reveals he's the person who murdered the 3 businessmen. He says basically nothing bothers him anymore. He's completely unhinged. No one can hurt him anymore. And basically then he says, you're no better than anyone else to the talk show host. You were making fun of me. The only reason you wanted me on your show was to make fun of me and bring me down for your own benefit. And then he pulls out the gun and he says, you're going to get what you deserve. And he blows him away right there on national TV in front of everyone. Okay? Of course, then the police arrest him, But as the police are driving through the city, there's a citywide riot. During the riot, this is the classic scene where Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne, the parents of Bruce Wayne, get murdered in an alley by someone dressed up as a clown, who then aims at Thomas and says, "You're going to get what you deserve." And he murders him just like the Joker had murdered the talk show host on TV. He inspired him to murder Thomas and Martha Wayne. Does that create the Batman? Interesting, right? Anyway, as the cop car is driving through the city with Joker in the back seat, the riot happens, and basically the car gets hit by another car, and Joker is saved by the people rioting in the streets, and now he's revered as a hero. He starts dancing, but the next thing you know, he's in a mental institution, and he's laughing. And the interesting part about this is that earlier in the movie, he had been in one of those, like a welfare office or office where you, a social services office, and he was talking to an African-American woman who was an agent for him to try to help him and get him his medications. At the end of the movie, he's in a mental institution talking to an African-American woman. I don't think it was the same one, but it was almost exactly the same situation, which leads you to believe, was any of that earlier in the movie real? Has he been in the mental institution the whole movie, right? And the whole thing's in his head? Or was half of it real and half of it fake? The final scene of the movie shows him walking down the hallway of the mental institution with bloody footprints. And then all of a sudden, one of the orderlies like chasing him in the background, and that's the end of the movie. Now you have no clue what just happened. It's a mind fuck of a movie. Like, it blew my mind, because at the end I was like, I don't know if anything was real. What was real? Maybe if you do it multiple viewings, there'll be hints at what was real and what was not. I'm sure some of it must have been real. But at what point was there a mental break from what happened and what didn't happen? What really happened with this character? You don't know. Now, apparently they're making a sequel, and the sequel likely will reveal a lot of that and answer a lot of those questions. But what are my thoughts? My God, the movie was incredibly well shot. So many awesome cinematic scenes, these really artistic ways. He'd be standing on that staircase you're seeing right there, and it would pan up, and behind him were the two cops investigating the murders. It would pan down and show the city. So many cool things. Again, him being emaciated for the movie, oh my God, did it add to the creepiness, the absolute creepiness of the plot and the movie itself. The whole idea that this is a realistic way that someone could have a mental split and actually act like this and start committing homicide all over the city because he's been bullied his whole life and he's been the downtrodden guy, and it's the first time ever he stuck up for himself and feeling empowered, almost makes it feel eerily realistic as to how this could happen in real life. What's funny is I remember when the movie came out, a lot of people were saying it made it seem glamorous to be someone like this. I don't think it does. I think this is a cautionary tale about people in our society around us who could very well be like this. And if we're not careful, if we keep stepping on people around us, we could very much end up with situations like this, okay? Hell, we're in a situation in society where we are seeing a bigger division between the haves and the have-nots in American society. We may be only a few years away from seeing a culture clash of epic scale where something like this could happen, and you could have a figurehead that inadvertently becomes a spearhead of a cultural movement and unrest. I mean, we had riots, we had social unrest just a few years ago. It could get worse and worse. You know, this is a scary-ass movie for multiple reasons. Not just the murders, but the commentary on American society, okay? I think, honestly, of all the times I've ever seen Joaquin act, this is his best performance ever. Like, I don't think I've ever seen him better. I don't know how he could top it, quite frankly. It's amazing, this character he's portraying and how much work he had to put into becoming that character. Holy shit. This is like masterclass stuff. I loved the movie, but I was scared shitless thinking about all these themes while watching it. And maybe that's the kind of movie that works, right? This is not a horror movie that's a slasher movie. This is a psychological horror movie. Think about how society, how this could happen, that this could very much be a realistic situation. You don't even know how much of the movie was real because the guy has so many mental breaks and things that he's fabricating that who knows what happened and what didn't, right? Now I'm fascinated what the sequel will be. Seriously, but I give this movie absolutely 2 thumbs up. I really enjoyed it for hopefully the right reasons. You know, I wasn't enjoying the brutal murders. I wasn't enjoying the horrible things happening to Arthur. What I was enjoying was the cinematography and the mystery aspect of it and the craziness of it and the realism. So, And again, it's not Joker from DC Comics whatsoever. It's its own iteration, much like how Heath Ledger had his own Joker in that movie in the Batman lore. This is a standalone Joker that's just as good, if not better, and is a crazy, crazy take on modern society. I recommend it. If you're okay with all those themes and everything, check it out. But, man, I'm very excited to see what the sequel turns out to be. All right, guys. I hope you liked my review of Joker. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.